If I can go back and start my Airbnb business all over, there are 5 things that I would do completely different. And one of them almost cost me everything. Most people in this space only want to show you the checks. They want to show you the Jovan quality units and the 100% occupancy rates. But as a former federal officer who spent 12 years inside the federal system, from TSA to the Pentagon, I know that a mission doesn't fail because of lack of effort. It fails because of lack of intelligence. What's going on, guys? I'm Jovan. I went from 0 to 19 units in under 3 years. I built a bridge out of the government and into geographic freedom, but that bridge had some serious cracks in the beginning. I made mistakes that cost me thousands of dollars and nearly burned me out before I even reached the 5-unit mark. Today, I'm giving you the cheat codes that I wish somebody gave me back in 2022. I'm gonna audit my own failures so you don't have to learn the hard way. We're gonna talk about the blind spots, the ego-driven decisions, and the hustler traps that almost ended my business before it truly started. If you're serious about your own exit protocol, you need to understand where the landmines are buried. I'm not here to sugarcoat this. These 5 mistakes are the reason most people quit within their first 6 months. They aren't looking for systems, they're looking for shortcuts. But if you can avoid these 5 different traps, you aren't just starting a side hustle, you're building an institution. Now, let's start with the first one. This is the luck versus logic mistake. When I launched my first unit in the Washington, D.C. area in November of 2022, I didn't have a data audit. I didn't have a strategy. I had a property, some furniture that I pieced together, and a lot of nerves. And I want to be honest, the night before that listing went live, I was staring at the photos of the unit, thinking to myself, what if this doesn't work? I had just dropped thousands of dollars on furniture and had to pay a monthly mortgage. My backup plan was to find a long-term tenant, but I knew the spread on the traditional rental would barely cover the costs. I was sitting there realizing that I had potentially just bought myself a very expensive, very empty Airbnb. And I got lucky. I launched exactly 1 week before Thanksgiving. In DC, that's a massive window for VFR travel, visiting friends and relatives. Because I hit that holiday surge, followed immediately by Christmas and New Year's, the revenue was strong enough to cover my lack of preparation. At that time, the DC market wasn't overly saturated. The gold rush was still on, and I benefited from the tide that was lifting all boats, even the ones with holes in them. But as I started to learn the business, I learned to plug these holes and actually optimize my listing. In 2026, the tide has gone out. You can't rely on a holiday to save you anymore. If you launch today without a market audit, you aren't an investor, you're just a gambler. Now, before I add a single unit to my portfolio, I perform a cold, hard data audit. I don't hope it'll get booked. I know it will because I check the institutional sensors, active inventory. How many units in this specific zip code are currently live? If the supply is growing faster than demand, I tend to walk away. Direct comps. I don't look at averages. I look at properties that match my exact size and proximity. If I'm looking at a 4-bedroom unit with 2 bathrooms, I audit the other 4-bedroom units with 2 bathrooms. Revenue floor versus ceiling. I use AirDNA and Price Labs to see exactly what the lowest performing month looks like. If the floor doesn't cover my operating costs, that market is a liability. I spent my first year playing a game of maybe. Now I play a game of definitely. 1 weekend of research before you sign a lease will save you 6 to 12 months of stress. That first one that I launched was a gamble that worked. The next mistake though, this one cost me real money out of my pocket. In the beginning, I didn't understand the difference between price and value. Most people enter this business and overspend on designer labels that don't drive revenue. But I actually made the opposite mistake. I bought things that were so cheap that they actually became a liability. In this business, if you buy a product that fails under the pressure of an 80% occupancy rate, you aren't saving money. You're paying a replacement tax. You end up spending more to fix the mistake than you would have spent just doing it right the first time. So take my first batch of towels. I thought I found a great deal until they arrived. I hadn't checked the dimensions, And these are supposed to be bath towels, but they felt so short that they felt like hand towels. It was a complete failure in guest experience. But now, I audit the dimensions of every textile. I intentionally buy towels that are longer than standard because the extra length in the towels actually creates a showroom quality and a luxurious feel that guests actually notice. Then we had a $300 couch that I bought on Wayfair. On paper, it looked fine, but in reality, it actually broke within the first 2 months. Here's the logic that most people miss. It's not about the $300 you lost. It's also about the logistical nightmare of a same-day turnover. Imagine if a guest checks out at 11 a.m. and the new guest checks in at 4 p.m. and your couch is still in pieces. You are now in a crisis. You cannot get a new couch delivered and assembled in 5 hours. So, I learned the hard way that for high-touch items, durability is the only metric that matters. I'm talking about beds, couches, chairs, mattresses, and smart locks. Now these are the gears of your machine. If they fail, then the machine stops. I now refuse to go too cheap on anything that a guest physically interacts with often or relies on for comfort and security. I also initially tried to skip putting TVs in the bedrooms of that very first house. I figured that people were there to explore the city, not watch Netflix. But again, I was wrong. The guest feedback told a different story. I started seeing a pattern of complaints, and instead of being defensive or even outright dismissing them, I listened. As an operator, you have to be responsive to the data. So what I ended up doing was purchasing and mounting TVs in every single bedroom. I didn't let the mistake discourage me. Instead, I used it to refine the protocol. So where do I save money now? Low touch items, wall art, decorative vases, items that just sit there and look really good in photos. Guests typically don't touch them, they don't wear them down, and if one does happen to break, it doesn't compromise the comfort of the entire stay. Invest in the hardware that moves. Save on the software that stays still. Alright, so the furniture was a lesson in value. The next mistake though, this was a lesson in burnout. So a lot of people enter this business looking for passive income, but they end up creating a high stress, low leverage situation for themselves. In the beginning, I wasn't just an operator, I was a cleaner and I was a customer service rep, and I still had my full-time job at the Pentagon. I was essentially working 3 jobs simultaneously. My day-to-day was dictated by the hostage hours of the industry. That's the 10 a.m. checkouts and the 4 p.m. check-ins. Now, while I was on duty, I was constantly managing the friction of those windows. Guests asking for early check-ins, late checkouts, or claiming that they couldn't find the house. I remember specifically being at work when the couch incident happened. The guest was just blowing up my phone because the cheap couch that I had bought had failed. And in that moment, I had to apply a communication protocol. Unless it's a fire, a flood, or a police matter, you don't need to react. You just need to respond. I learned to tell guests, I hear your concern, please give me a few minutes to resolve this. And then I'll handle it once my immediate work duties were clear. If you react to every notification like it's a life or death emergency, you will burn out before you reach Unit 3. Now let's be real about the labor. In the beginning, I did the cleanings myself. If you're low on funds or you need the extra cash to de-risk your first unit, cleaning is actually a great side gig. It keeps your overhead low and your profit high. I also believe you should do the first few cleanings yourself. You need to understand the landscape. You need to know how long it takes to clean a bedroom and a bathroom and what showroom quality actually looks like. But once you understand the business, you have to move on. If your goal is to be a high-level operator, the type of person who can quit their 9-to-5 job, then you cannot stay in the cleaning business. You're trading your high-value strategic time for low-value labor. The moment I hired a cleaning company, my anxiety dropped by about 50% and my ability to scale tripled. I stopped being a worker and started being an architect. When you have one unit, you can be a hero. You know every guest's name and every detail. But as you scaled, the noise is amplified. Here's the truth about guests in 2026. They do not read. You can put the Wi-Fi and the password in the manual, on the fridge, in the sign in the kitchen, and they still will message you at 11 p.m. asking for the Wi-Fi. And if you're manually answering those kind of questions, you're basically a slave to the platform. I put a property management software. For me, it was hospitable. I put that in place from day one to handle automated messaging. But even that wasn't enough once you scale. You eventually need a virtual assistant or an AI integrated system to act as a buffer. If you try to be the primary point of contact for 19 units, the mental fatigue will cause you to make mistakes in your data and in your pricing. This is a game of teams and systems, not a one-man show. Don't try to be a hero. Try to be an architect who builds a machine that doesn't need them to function. Now, in the federal government, I was used to operating within a massive framework of rules. In Airbnb, those rules aren't static. They shift. One of the biggest mistakes you can make is assuming that because a city is open today, it will be open forever. I've had to navigate these shifts in every market I touch. In Houston, we moved from a wide open landscape to a mandatory registration system. In Alexandria, Virginia, they just implemented a new sign-up requirement. And in Washington, D.C., the restrictions are still some of the tightest in the whole country. If you aren't auditing the legal landscape monthly, you aren't just an operator, you're a target for fines. Now look at our unit in New York City. As most of you might know, any rental under 30 days is illegal there. An amateur would have seen that law and walked away, or worse, tried to hide it and then get hit with a hefty fine. As an architect, I didn't see a wall. I saw a pivot. We shifted that unit to the 30-day minimum stay, which are also known as midterm rentals. We're still profitable because we understood how to adjust our model to fit to the regulations. You have to be fluid. When the market shifts, your protocol has to shift with it. Now, I've never had a landlord back out after a lease was signed, but I've had plenty of verbal agreements fall apart before the ink was dry. The reason? HOAs. Homeowners associations are the most unpredictable gatekeepers in real estate. They are notoriously strict, and their bylaws are often more strict than the law. While there are loopholes and ways to work around them, I've personally made the strategic decision to avoid HOAs entirely. The stress and the constant friction with an HOA board isn't worth my energy. I'd rather put my flag in a property where I have clear, direct communication with the owner and the city, not a committee of neighbors. Before I even pitch a landlord, I perform a regulatory audit. It's not complex, but it is mandatory. I simply go to Google and I type in short-term rentals in X city. But here's the detail that most people miss. You have to check the city and/or the county. Sometimes the city says yes, but it's in a county with a different tax or permit requirement. You have to cover all your bases before you commit a single dollar of capital. If you don't know the rules to the game, you shouldn't be playing. In the world of entrepreneurship, we are taught that growth is everything. But as an architect, I've learned that growth without an infrastructure is just a controlled collapse. My fifth and most taxing mistake was scaling too quickly. I hit a sprint where I decided to scale to 10 units in just 15 months. At first, it looked like I was winning, but in reality, I was outrunning my own systems. When you scale that fast, you aren't just adding revenue, you're adding complexity, noise, and points of failure. The break didn't happen while I was still at the Pentagon. It actually happened right after I quit. I thought that leaving my 9-to-5 would give me the time to fix the cracks, but instead, I found myself going more and more hands-on than ever just to stop the bleeding. Because the growth was just so aggressive, my cleaners actually became overwhelmed. Standards that were once showroom quality began to slip. And when your volume exceeds your team's capacity, the quality of your product is the first thing to die. My biggest error during this sprint was waiting too long to hire virtual assistants. I didn't bring them on until I already had 10 units. Now by that time, the fire was already burning. Trying to train a new team while also managing 10 active properties is a recipe for disaster. There were massive gaps in customer service because the virtual assistants couldn't get up to speed fast enough to meet guest expectations. Guests felt annoyed by the wait times, questions went unanswered, and the expert image that I built had basically begun to tarnish. That chaos had a specific price tag: bad reviews and refunds. When the quality slips in this business, the platform punishes you immediately. I lost money, not because the market was bad, but because my foundation wasn't ready for the weight that I put on it. Looking back, it was a mix of luck, opportunity, and just seizing the moment. I wouldn't change the outcome because those 10 units proved that the model worked, but I would change the order of the operations. If I were doing it again today, and as I continue to scale toward 20 units and beyond, I don't add a single unit until the system is firmly in place to handle it. Scaling fast is fine, but your systems have to be even faster. You don't build a skyscraper and then figure out the plumbing. You ensure that the infrastructure is institutional grade before you add the next floor. Well guys, those are the 5 mistakes that cost me the most time and the most money. I've been honest with you today because I want you to see the real cost of these blind spots. From skipping research to overscaling without a team, these traps are designed to catch the hustler and stop the architect. And honestly, I'd make those mistakes every single time because they got me here. They taught me how to build a business that replaced a 12-year federal career in just 15 months. But you don't have to make them. You've got the cheat codes now. Use them to build your bridge faster and more securely than I did. If you want the full A to Z process, the exact scripts I use to pitch to landlords, and the software I use to automate my 19 units, my masterclass is linked in the description below. And if you haven't already, please subscribe and hit the bell. Every week, I'm dropping the high-level game that took me years of mistakes to figure out. I'll see you guys in the next one.